WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange pleaded guilty Wednesday to an espionage charge as part of a plea deal with the U.S. government that allowed him to regain his freedom. The outgoing Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, has been chosen as the next NATO Secretary General. Thousands of protesters stormed Kenya's parliament on Tuesday after a bill to increase taxes in the African country was passed. Hello, welcome to From the House. I am Irma Shelton from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange pleaded guilty Wednesday to an espionage charge as part of a plea deal with the U.S. government that allowed him to regain his freedom after a more than decade-long court battle. Assange pleaded guilty in front of a federal court in Saipan, capital of the Northern Mariana Island, a U.S. territory of the South Pacific, to the crime of conspiracy to obtain and disclose information relevant to U.S. national defense. In court, Assange received a sentence from the judge presiding over the hearing of 62 months in prison, but will not spend time in U.S. custody because he received credit for time spent incarcerated in the United Kingdom. According to experts who have commented on surprising development, it does not appear that the plea agreement will set new legal precedents that will harm journalists in the future. Julian Assange had been charged with 18 crimes of espionage and computer intrusion in the United States after the uncensorable WikiLeaks website exposed U.S. war crimes. From July to November 2010, Assange published on WikiLeaks confidential documents on Afghanistan's and Iraq's operation. He revealed 70,000 top-secret files on the international coalition in Afghanistan, 400,000 reports, and 250,000 diplomatic cables on the U.S. invasion of Iraq. All these documents reveal multiple war crimes committed by the United States and its allies in their invasion against Middle Eastern countries. Consequently, he was arrested on April 11 of 2019 after being in asylum for several years in the diplomatic headquarters of Ecuador in London until was expelled from the embassy by the government of Lenin Moreno, being apprehended by the British security forces. Later, on May 23 of 2019, the U.S. justice system, which had already charged him with computer hacking, indicted him on 17 other charges under the anti-espionage law. In this context, Julian Assange's brothers, Gabriel Shipton, celebrated his release and affirmed that the journalist's health has deteriorated during his imprisonment.
Well, his health has been deteriorating. He has a few different conditions health-wise, but I think now is a chance for him to rest and recuperate. And we've been told by the doctors who assessed him that he can recover from this. So I think that's the time for him now, is to rest and to recover. But we're just so, as Julian's family, we're overjoyed, we're overwhelmed that he is finally free. This has been an incredibly long campaign with many millions of people around the world advocating for Julian.
Gabriel Shipton also affirmed that the international pressure was key to achieve the freedom of Julian Assange.
It's taken years. It's taken years. It's taken constant lobbying around the world, constant protests. It's taken the media. The media has been integral in this. They've been covering this story more and more, which has put a lot more pressure on those who have been pursuing Julian. I've been working in Washington, working in Congress over there, advocating for Julian's release, for the past 3 or 4 years. This has been a global effort to get Julian Assange free, and credit to everybody out there. The Pope has advocated for Julian. The President Lula of Brazil, the Australian Prime Minister. This has been a global effort to free Julian.
Meanwhile, in Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese welcomed the agreement reached between the U.S. government and WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
I've been very clear as both the Labor leader in opposition, but also as Prime Minister, that regardless of the views that people have about Mr Assange's activities, the case has dragged on for too long. There's nothing to be gained by his continued incarceration, and we want him brought home to Australia.
In other news, the outgoing Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, has been chosen as the next NATO Secretary General. He will take up his post from October 2024, when James Stoltenberg's terms expire. Stoltenberg, through his X account, warmly welcomed the election by NATO allies of Minister Mark Rutte as his successor. He described Rutte as a true transatlantic, a strong leader, and a consensus builder. He wishes Rutte every success as they continue to strengthen NATO, and was confident about leaving NATO in good hands. On repeated occasions, Rutte has shown his unquestioning support for the Kiev regime and expressed his fierce criticism of Moscow and, in particular, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, revealed a destabilizing plan to demolish the Angostura Bridge over the Orinoco River. During a visit to the Marhuata parish in the Bolivar state, the Venezuelan executive denounced destabilizing attempts by sectors of the extreme right, which have cut the cables to cause the bridge to collapse. Likewise, he affirmed that they have caused disgrace and suffering to the Venezuelan people, while reaffirming that peace must maintain in the country after the presidential elections on July 28th. The United States leaves Cuba on human trafficking country list. The U.S. government maintained Cuba at level 3, the worst category, in the State Department's annual reports on human trafficking released on Monday, presented by Anthony Blinken, Secretary of the State, along with Cindy Dyer, Special Ambassador to monitor and combat trafficking in persons. The base and one-sided report points to the Cuban government's failure to fully comply with the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. To justify the qualification, the report, referring to the year 2023, used contradictory and not at all credible arguments, which continues to misrepresent and defame the work of Cuban medical collaboration for decades in more than 100 countries. In Cuba, the Ministry of Public Health confirmed the presence of Oropouche virus in 9 provinces and 23 municipalities of the Caribbean country based on samples studied at the island's National Laboratory. The National Director of Epidemiology of the Ministry of Public Health, Francisco Duran, explained that through the monitoring of surveillance of non-specific febrile syndromes, these cases were identified and all have evolved favorably, with improvement of the symptoms between the 3rd and 4th day of the onset of the disease. Likewise, Dr. Duran indicated that the clinical picture manifested as a consequence of the disease is mild, preceded by incubation period of 5 to 7 days, characterized by fever, headaches, muscle and joint pain, sometimes vomiting and diarrhea. Associated with the virus are also reported. In Peru, human rights organization asked the Office of the Prosecutors of the International Criminal Court on Monday to open an investigation into the crimes against humanity of murder, of attempted murder committed by the government of Dina Boluarte between December 7 of 2022 and February 9 of 2023. The International Federation for the Human Rights and one of its members organizations in Peru, the Pro-Human Rights Association, presented a document in which they substantiate the murder of 49 people and 937 people injured during the protests of 2022 and 2023. The documents also specify the justiciability exercise carried out to the present day through the prosecutor's office to clarify the basis of the crime. In Argentina, Javier Milei's government-based bill was approved on Tuesday at the meeting of the Chamber of Deputies Commissions and will be dealt with on Thursday in the Chamber of Deputies. The ruling bloc of freedom moved forward, reached an agreement with the so-called dialoguist opposition and obtained 66 signatures for the initiative to advance one step further in Congress with the changes proposed in the Senate. Meanwhile, the blocs of Union for the Homeland, the Left and Workers' Front, and the Socialist Deputy Monique Fain rejected the opinion. The initiative, which gives more tools to the executive to deepen the adjustment and liberalize the economy, was approved in general on June 13 in the Senate with a series of modifications. We continue in Argentina, where the unemployment rate for the first quarter of 2024 rose to 7.7%. The National Institute of Statistics and Census of Argentina indicate that this figure represents an increase of 2% compared to the last quarter of last year, and that is 0.8% higher than the rate record in the first quarter of 2023. According to this organization's report, the activity rate, which measures the economically active population over the total population, reached 48%, and the employment rate, which measures the proportion of the employed people in relation to the total population, was of 44.3%. Likewise, it added that the under-occupation rate was 10.2% of the economically active population, while the other employed persons in demand and other available persons not in demand reaches together 11.7%. Palestinian sources confirmed on Tuesday that at least Palestinian sources confirmed on Tuesday that at least 10 members of the family of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh, including his sister Sarah Haniyeh, were killed in an early morning Israeli raid on the family compound in Shati refugee camp in northern Gaza City. 40 Gazans minimum were killed in several Israeli attacks across the Gaza Strip, mostly targeting schools for displaced people. Palestinian authorities report that the Zionist entity carried out a series of airstrikes in several areas of the Gaza Strip in the past 24 hours, leaving some dead and injured. At least 16 people, mostly children and women, were killed and dozens injured in the shelling of 2 UN refugee agency shelters near East in Al-Shati and Al-Daraj neighborhoods in Gaza City. The Gaza Ministry of Health reports that almost 38,000 Palestinians were killed as a result of attacks by the Israeli regime's army on the occupied territories since last October, the majority of them women and children. The Gaza public entity stressed in a statement that it has so far been able to confirm around 86,000 wounded and has reported that at least 32 people were killed and 139 injured by 3 massacres committed by the Israeli occupation during the past 24 hours. The Gaza authorities have indicated that around 10,000 people are missing, so the death toll could be much higher than officially announced. The Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, warned on Tuesday of the danger of famine in the Gaza Strip due to the genocide by the Israeli occupation forces. Through his X account, he declared that 1 in 5 people in Gaza experience an extreme lack of food and added that almost all people in the street face high levels of acute food insecurity. He also noted that the devastation caused by the hostilities remain unspeakable. Only an end to hostilities and immediate, unimpeded, and sustained humanitarian access can reduce the risk of famine in the Gaza Strip. On Tuesday, Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, emphasized the significance of a strong turnout in the country's upcoming presidential elections scheduled for Friday. Khamenei made the remarks in an address to thousands of Iranians from the different provinces gathered in Iran's capital, Tehran, 3 days ahead of the 14th presidential elections and on the occasion of the religious holiday of Eid al-Ghadir, according to a statement published on the leader's website. Iran's leader stated that the next president should firmly believe in the principles and foundations of the Islamic revolution and establishment, demonstrate efficiency and liveliness in fulfilling responsibilities, and possess the ability to harness the country's diverse and abundant resources to drive progress. And we have a final short break coming up. But before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. It's final short break. Don't go away. welcome back to From the South. The Kenyan government has requested the support of the International Monetary Fund in order to solve its liquidity problems and pay its public debt. The nation's public debt is reported to be more than 68% of its gross domestic product, a figure higher than the one recommended by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Both agencies urge the government of the African country to meet revenue targets to access more international financing. Kenya is key ally of the United States and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and has expressed its support to Western countries regarding their opposition on Ukraine, assuring that the Russian special operation is illegal. Kenya, at least 17 people were killed Tuesday in serious protests against a new bill that provides for tax hikes after a day of mobilizations unprecedented in the history of the country that led to the storming of parliament. According to a source of the police reform working group of Kenya, 14 of the deaths were recorded in Nairobi, where the police opened fire while trying to prevent unsuccessfully the demonstrators from accessing the parliament premise. The Angus also documented 86 injuries so far, as well as 55 of 52 arrests, most of them in the Kenyan's capital. The platform also claimed to have recorded at least 21 abductions and disappearance of activities in the last 24 hours at the hands of the uniformed and non-uniformed officers, although 2 of those affected have already been released. Kenya's parliament passed a finance bill that introduced new taxes as part of the measures the government considers necessary to pay the country's debts to the international creditors. With this law, the government of Kenya intends to raise $2.7 billion in additional tax to reduce the budget's deficit and state indebtedness, which amounts 68% of the gross domestic product. The new tax measures have an impact on the price of basic commodities such as bread, cooking oil, and sugar, as well as most manufactured goods, including sanitary pads and diapers. The measures also contemplates a tax on the circulation of motor vehicles and an increase in existing tax on financial transactions. The Argentine national team achieved on Tuesday an agonizing and costly victory over Chile by 1-0 and sealed the path to the quarterfinals of the Copa America 2024 in the framework of the second match of day of Group A. Lautaro Martinez scored with only 2 minutes left in the match, played at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, and gave the victory to the team. With this result, the national team reaches 6 points and is at the top of its sum. Argentina has already secured a place in the next stage, as Canada is in second place with 3 points, while Chile and Peru close the group with 1 point. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok.